Here we go. Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and right over there is John, our resident millennial. John, how are you doing this evening?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yes.
That's good. I like fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
it's whew.
I'm actually at that stage of like overtired to where I'm like energetic and up. Because I've been up for 34 hours now. So,
Have you really?
yeah.
Why have you done that,
Just
John?
I'm
Tell
trying to
us the
fix
story.
my sleeping schedule because I've been staying up way too late recently. It's actually ever since the 12-hour show. I've just been staying up just like sometimes until like 4 or 5 in the morning if I have to go to work at like 6 or something like that. It's been pretty shitty. So I just figured, fuck it. I had to go in at 5:30 this morning. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just stay up. Toughen it through the day. You know, and after the show, I'm passing the hell out. So
Um, so, John, I believe what we need to know is what the hell are you doing up all night? What are you doing? What are you doing to keep yourself busy?
I mean, playing video games or just doing other shit.
See, John, and this is why the video games are bad. Video
Yeah,
games are bad for you.
it's a
Um, they're
conspiracy by the
they're
Jews to
they're
make you stay up all night.
they're horrible things. I see Cameron
Well, yeah,
Michael in the chat, by the way.
I see
Just
him as well. He contracted gingivitis from watching the show, even though it's not on the Gin Gap disclaimer.
um,
Well, well, it sounds like a personal hygiene issue rather than anything to do with the show.
and when it's all said and done, if it didn't make the list, because there's some pretty awful shit on that list, it sounds like you probably got off easy.
Yeah.
If you don't have general malaise, whew, you got off easy.
Yeah.
You really did. So, John, do you agree with me that if folks are out there, they're watching the show, they should be hitting the like button, hitting that subscribe button, and making sure they're showing us the love?
Oh well, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, like, what else would you do? What else are you doing with your life? It's a Monday night. You're sitting here with us. At least unless it's a Monday night right now. I don't know if when you in particular are watching it, if it's a Monday night, but you should hit that like button either way. Just hit that subscribe button either way. You should go and check out our links in the description, such as our Twitter link, such as our Discord link, such as freedomscoop.com. You can buy our shirts, get 15% off. They'd make a great gift for us.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Hey,
make sure you
what?
do that.
Are you wearing your shirt, John?
What's up, Midget B? I am. And we didn't plan that either.
Nope, we never do.
I
I
didn't
love
I
it.
didn't actually yeah. I didn't know you were wearing it until you
I mean, we don't
mentioned
even
it.
plan our show, much less our shirts. Good to see you, midget.
Right.
Good to
Much
see.
less the wardrobe.
Good to see you, midget. Good to see you. Um, so, John, you said something about the title. I put in there that there's just a lot of shut ups that are just so many shut ups needed, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of shutting up that needs to go on lately.
Oh, hey RRC, what's up, brah?
RRC in there. I asked you if you had any shut ups that were going out. So you said you had one that was
Yeah.
something that had been going on with you. Why don't you clue us in on that one?
Um well, so let me give a little background. Used to be a big fan of a YouTube channel called The Bible Reloaded, which then became Hugo and Jake, which is now Hannah and Jake, but that's completely irrelevant to what's going on here. Um, but Jake from formerly Hugo and Jake has been going on Twitter recently and just having the worst takes about this whole okay hand sign being white nationalist and all this kind of shit. Uh, and so, uh, if I don't know if it's up on the screen now,
No,
um,
but it can be in about
it should be.
right now. There it
All
is.
right. Yeah. So he had tweeted out, quote tweeted, I guess somebody else. He said they successfully convinced both normies and normie white nationalists that it's a white nationalist symbol. So it is now. They use it regularly. The meme became reality. So I decided to come in and say they're coming for the rainbow flag as well. So I guess the LGBT community needs to give that one up too. Just let them have all the symbols, I guess, right? Because that's what his logic is, or that's what follows with his logic, is that if white nationalists use it, that means it is now a white nationalist symbol. And so anything can be. And I was hoping he would respond because he was quote tweeting people all day, but it was all people he could easily just kind of, walk over. But I guess he didn't think he could do that with mine because to me it makes a lot of sense. If you get to acknowledge one, you have to acknowledge all of them. So there's
Well,
that one, and I was waiting for him
yeah.
to respond so I could give him the. There's one meme that I have that's all the whole ASL alphabet as like white nationalist symbols. And I was like, well, sorry, deaf people. Jake says you can't use ASL anymore. I guess you're fucked. But he
Wow.
never did because I mean, obviously, it makes too much sense.
Yeah,
So
it's that's one of
he
those.
needs to shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my thing.
yeah. They and anybody making those kind of arguments, it. But now on the flip side, I hate the fact that it's a thing. I hate the fact that this is one of those things where social media just they should have shut the fuck up. A
Yeah,
lot of this was generated by 4chan, just troll bullshit that and managed to catch on because of the sheeple mentality.
yeah.
And it's just like it spreads, and it's like I really wish they would have shut up about this,
Well, see,
very
that's the
early
thing
on.
is, I wouldn't even blame 4chan for it because I mean, yeah, we hear about like the epic trolling that they do, but there's so many attempts that go nowhere that no one really sees because they don't, no one talks about it. It doesn't gain any kind of traction. It's when it gets picked up by the media. It's when it gets picked up, by these Twitter blue check marks that it starts picking up steam and starts getting out into the mainstream. And that's the only time you really hear about actual like 4chan trolling ops and stuff is when it actually is a good one. But 9 times out of 10, 90% of the time, it goes nowhere. So
Yeah.
I don't think you can really put that on 4chan other than the attempt.
Well, it's still, it's again,
And Midget, I'll post it on Discord after the show.
this is, what
I have posted it in there before, actually. But
more
sorry, go ahead.
more to the fact that this is one of those things that social media, just really has given this a life that it doesn't need. It shouldn't, it just shouldn't be there. I hate it too. Yeah, everybody involved with it should shut the fuck up so I can feel comfortable teaching my granddaughter to give me a thumbs up and say everything's good. We're
Yeah.
all's good, or she can give me a hey, okay, no problem. Without having to go down this road that we're constantly going down.
Yeah.
It's all crazy bullshit to me.
Yep. 100%. All bullshit. It's all bullshit and it's bad for you. To
Grade
quote George
A,
Carlin.
grade A, USDA choice bullshit.
Yep. So that was my shut up for the evening. I know that you've got one as well
Well,
there.
well, I got a couple actually. Mainstream media, man, it's just, I still, I know that we throw shut ups out to them, but man, this is, it's, you know, the way they pander to the, I posted an article in Discord. It was just a bullshit article. It was nothing major, but it kind of bled into the porn discussion that was going on in the chat for a while there in the debate channel. And it was about a Disney actress. I forget her fucking name because it's irrelevant to me. But she wound up going into porn. She's full blown triple X
Oh
porn
yeah.
actress now, right? And the headline was like porn Disney star blah 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 says she got into porn by accident. And it's like, okay, you're thoroughly misrepresenting it because like that title right there, that article headline right there, just immediately allows those people that are the TLDR people
Hmm.
It allows them to form some, and I have to give Midget props. Midget made a joke about it, and I saw it
Yeah, that was
as
really
I saw it as the joke it
funny.
was, and I'm like, good, but
Right.
it does speak to the TLDRs out there that are like, that will pass judgment. Oh, of course, poor her. She got into porn by accident.
Yeah.
Oh, but it wasn't that at all. She just wound up, she posted some sexy pictures on Instagram. Her agent was like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." She was like, "Whatever." And so she did it anyway. But then she had a lot of people that were like, "Oh, you should do a private Instagram. You should do a private Instagram." She's like, "Okay,
Well, yeah,
whatever."
private Snapchats and
Or
shit.
see, yeah, and so she did, and
Yeah.
she said within a month she had 2,500 paying subscribers. And she's like, it just went from there. I started getting more daring, doing
Yeah.
more stuff, and I was having fun, and I was getting paid. My
Right.
husband is on board with it. It's just So, and I'm just like, that's not by accident. That's just circumstance. That's
Right. It
just a
was
thing.
right. It was just unintentional as opposed
Right.
to accidental. Like she didn't mean for it to end up there, as opposed to her like walking onto a set and just tripping and falling on cock. Like there's a difference, you
Right.
know.
Right. So that headline, one of those misleading headlines that plays to the TLDR sheeple out there. It's just, again, it's just a very small example of the shut up that needs to go out to mainstream media lately.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I have to say this, and I am gonna call somebody out. And Ron Helton, I see you there. Good to see you. Glad to see you're at the show tonight. After the end of Ed's live stream, he will be back with us. We'll have him in house. But
Sweet.
so there's been conversation going on lately in Discord about various things. Like I said, there was a porn discussion going on here recently. There was great discussion about military would
Well,
you
military
generals,
philosophy. Philosophy.
philosophy, but not philosophers, generals philosophizing about military
Well,
strategy.
one was a general. The other one was
What was
I forget what
Machiavelli?
Machiavelli. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what his position was. He was some sort of like advisor. Yeah.
A strategist,
Um.
perhaps?
Well, not maybe. I can't actually remember here.
I
You
don't
know
know
what? I
what
actually want to look it up
I don't know what they
because
called those people.
that's gonna bother me.
Don't know what they called them at the time. Um, but yeah, there's some good discussions going on. But as is not unusual when certain people get involved in
Um.
the conversation.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
So he was a diplomat, politician, historian, philosopher, writer, playwright, and poet. Jesus. Uh, Often called the father of modern political philosophy and political science. He served as a senior official in the Florentine Republic, responsibilities in diplomatic and military affairs. Okay. So he was basically an advisor and diplomat.
Right.
Yep.
But as is often the case in our Discord and many others, almost any chat, he was a
Courtier. Yeah, yeah, an
courtier,
advisor. Yeah.
yeah, a concierge. He's a concierge,
That's a totally different thing.
right? He get you dinner and a hooker. No, anyway, but these conversations can often, I guess the best word for it is degenerate. Is a good word for it.
Derail. Yeah.
Derail to a more lowbrow degree. And this happened recently. I think a lot of it stemmed from the porn conversation. And I'm going to call Nathaniel Slattery Bear out on this one because I want to have this discussion with him, and if he wants to do it on his turf, that's fine. I'll go on his show and I'll talk about it. He posits this idea, or this mindset that everything, all of this degenerate behavior is directly targeted at kids, like and even this idea that men must be in constant control because porn and its derivative forms will will ultimately make any men in general snap and want to have sex with kids. I don't know. It's weird,
Yeah,
but
I need to see the line of logic for that because that doesn't make
um,
any sense.
But this idea that everything is targeted at kids, I think, is a false premise. Yes, I get that some things may be, but I don't think that's the reason why um, kids get involved in these things for the most part, or why they're exposed to them. And I'd like to have
Yeah.
that conversation because I think it's about access, and I think it's about parental access, more so than companies being at fault, or entities being at fault for targeting kids. I uh, I would like to see more proof on that, a deeper proof that it's being targeted. This accusation has been made at companies before, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't believe Joe Camel was targeted at kids so much as it was other specific groups. I honestly believe that, even though the
Hmm.
company bore in mind that teen kids would enjoy a cartoon figure selling cigarettes. I get it, but they made sufficient argument in my mind that it could have been targeted at many audiences. But that's a very small one, But I don't agree that porn's targeted at kids. That was a big argument that was made by Nate, and
Yeah.
it's not. I can show very specific examples
Right.
because I have
I
one
mean,
in.
just because there's cartoon porn doesn't mean it's aimed at kids, you know.
Right, right. Hello, millennials. I mean, uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, so Nate, Nathaniel Slattery Bear, if you're out there, if you hear this, I'm going to put this in Discord as well. I want to have this conversation with you. I'd love to have it on your stream, my stream, our stream, John. I'd love it if
It's
you were
our
there.
stream,
If you could,
comrade.
if you wanted to make it a full blown debate, yeah, I just didn't know if you'd want to, if you want to be a part of the conversation, or
Not especially.
now if you wanted to run a debate, if Nate wanted to take it to a debate level, I could do
Nah.
that as well. But
No, because
you know,
Nate's a derailer. He's a hijacker. He's not gonna. He doesn't respect.
ooh,
Yeah, he doesn't respect when people have, like the process, I guess, like the
right,
formality of
right.
it. Yeah, he wouldn't
Well,
respect
and
that.
that's fine. I can have a
We went through that
conversation with him.
before. We went through that before with the 1913 dictionary debate. We found out he won't. Yeah, he won't
Well,
respect the process. So
well,
screw it. Just make it a conversation.
well. It's it is what it is. I just I deny that. I don't want to sit and type the conversation up in Discord because
Yeah,
that gets long and boring and tedious and more
yeah.
frustrating for me than just
Well, that and
confronting
there's
it
other
face to
people
face.
around who will, jump in with their thing and kind of, take it off topic and not take it, I guess not treat it with the seriousness that you're trying to treat it with.
Yeah, I see it. I see it as more malicious propaganda than anything else, and so I want to address it. And
Yeah.
that's that. So I'm just putting it out there. That's it's in a sense that's one of the shut ups I want to put out there. I
Well,
want
yeah.
people. I
So,
want this. I want this conversation to end that people are out there having like this.
yeah. So you guys out there, look forward to that. That's probably going to happen at some point
I
in
hope
the near
so.
future.
I hope so. Keep your
No,
fingers
he's pretty good.
crossed.
He's pretty good about, accepting. Uh, I don't want to say like a challenge, but about having discussions about things.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
Well,
He'll talk about it. Yeah, he's not going to be like, no, fuck you. He'll do it.
he could. He could. I just let's have the conversation. So that being said, the only other thing that and we touched on a minute ago, because that conversation that was going on in Discord. Now I wasn't really a part of that, but I
Yeah.
do enjoy the conversations because I like military history. Although I am getting into a point in my life where I'm having some very philosophically troubled thoughts about war and about mankind as a whole, especially in these, um, for a classic cliche phrase, these difficult times in which we find ourselves.
Hmm.
It's both interesting and frightening at the same time. Whenever I think about a lot of this stuff, but you have some decent historical knowledge of wartime, the military, and especially Now, I think you focus on it. There's a specific age period
Um.
that you
Well,
focus on
I have a
that you
favorite
enjoy.
one.
Right.
I have a favorite one. Yeah,
I think you said that was like the around the War of 1812, around there.
Napoleonic Wars. Yeah,
Napoleonic.
so
Yeah.
the War of 1812 would be in that same kind of era.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
but that is my favorite. And in fact, I'm going to recommend a book real quick. I have it on hand, luckily. Uh, Art of Warfare in the Age of Napoleon. Excellent book. Has, all kinds of either illustrations of formations. I just saw one. Hang on. I think it's like a fort. Oh, no. Inside of a cannon of one's a howitzer, the other one's a 12 pounder. Yeah, so a 12 pounder and a howitzer. I mean, there's just all kinds of different illustrations. It's like how I can't read which battle it is, but there's like how a battle took place. It's a pretty interesting book. Recommend getting it. Straight and
jeez,
sweet.
John,
Oh yeah, total
John,
fucking weird stuff in here. Yeah,
John, John,
nerdy as fuck.
John. Yeah, yeah.
What?
Could you possibly? I mean, really, if you're gonna do that, could you at least wear a shirt where you can wear the pocket protector with the ink pens and
Why? Who the
everything?
fuck uses pens anymore? I just use my phone. I
Anyway.
don't know. Not that kind of nerd. Those are usually science nerds anyway.
Hmm. Oh my God, you get so nerdy when you start talking about
I
that
know,
aspect of it. I'm like, oh God.
dude. It's so
So,
awesome.
John, what I would rather do is I would rather pick apart your mind a little bit on some of the more philosophical aspects of war, since that conversation it's kind of revolved around Machiavelli and Sun Tzu and some comparisons of the two, etc. Right? Um, but this idea of war, this idea of us, being just really shitty humans to one another, along with conversations recently had about, our natural rights, I'll air quote that. I have to do that. Natural rights that we have, et cetera, et cetera. War is not conducive to natural rights, right? It's very, would you agree, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, especially when you start talking about like conscription, and things like that. Which I mentioned this off mic, but I'm gonna bring it here. It's funny. The war is basically the concept like if you, Robert, hate me, John, and you're like, fuck you, I'm gonna send a whole bunch of my guys to go and kick your ass, and I'm like, well, fuck you, I'm gonna get a whole bunch of people and they're gonna go and kick your ass, and they just end up fighting each other, and we're just chilling, trying to figure out who's gonna win. Like I thought that was like a really interesting, way of
Right.
putting it. Kind of like my friends can kick your ass. No, my friends can kick your ass, and then they just end up kicking each other's ass, and
And you very
one
much
side gets wealthy.
and you're very much specifically forcing people to violate other people's natural rights, right?
Yeah.
Right, just like it's not even their fault. I feel so bad for like
Yeah.
soldiers in war, because it's like
Yeah.
I get that they believe that they're fighting for something. I get it. They believe in it and they're fighting to. I would do this. Yes, I will fight for this country should the need arise that I have to take up arms to do so.
Hmm.
But the idea that you can just be sent over for someone else's bullshit and just
Yeah.
and face these. So I think about it and I'm like, so then my mind goes to this place where I'm like, well, that the old song plays in my head, war. What is it good for? What is war good for, right? War is only good for the victors. Am I correct?
uh, yeah. Basically, I mean, it's not like you can't benefit as the loser, but typically, no.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can justify the loss, right?
Yeah.
And the victor can justify the loss as as in from the standpoint of freeing a people, from oppression, et cetera, liberating the
Right.
people, as it were. Um, but war always begets war. Am I correct?
Um, Not always. I mean, sometimes if you win completely and outright, that particular war is over, and you're not going to fight those people again because you've completely taken them and uh like absorbed them into your empire or your nation or whatever it is. So not always, but yeah, usually people get salty about losing wars, and we usually try and avenge that loss.
So
So it does happen. I mean, uh, if you want to talk about like just the history between England and France, you know, that was just war after war after war after war after war, trying to
right.
get back lost ground, trying to take new ones. Yeah.
And that feeds to a very good point is how many wars. So so when we look back, I mean, we go back as far as you know, in recorded history. I mean, we can go back as far as the ancient Egyptians, and even further back, we can look at wars that happened that there's still some historical record of, or knowledge of.
Hmm.
But would I be correct in saying that in most of the major wars that have gone on, empires moving and building and just growing, et cetera, all the different things, isn't there usually another war that follows that, that is usually spurred by some rebellious faction, some group within that
Um,
holdings, within that territory, within the whatever, under that rule,
yeah.
that sparks a new war, thus
Well,
negating the.
so rebellions don't always cause an actual war. Sometimes it's just an uprising or an attempted coup, something like that. That's not really
Well,
like a full scale war.
when you
It's just, trying to either regain your sovereignty, but it
right.
gets dies out really quickly, or something like that. That's usually what happens with rebellions. The
Well,
reason why we talk about rebellions and war is because those are the ones that were big and
what
or successful.
okay, and maybe rebellious factions is the wrong term. So, like when you talk, I guess when you were talking about England and France, trying to regain territory that was taken in a
Yeah,
previous war, this, that, and the other. That's to me. Okay, so whatever you would call that. These, continued. Is that even an escalation? It's just the next
it's
war
yeah,
to try and acquire land, etc.
yeah. It's
It's
just a
just
continuation of previous conflicts, like after a break.
right.
It's usually due to like pride and a claim of divine rights. So it's like uh, who was it? Shit. Um, King of France during the uh,
King
Calais. Either way, Calais was the one I'm thinking of, where it was an English, like the English had that land for a long time inside of France, and I'm trying to think who. I think it was King James. No, that was
uh,
anyway.
King
I'm
Louis.
sure.
King
Well,
Louis,
no, that was later. That was later.
Roman numeral, so and so.
That was later. But I'm thinking more like Hundred Years' War uh, era.
Yeah,
But you're thinking of the like French Revolution.
fuck the
Um,
French. I don't care
yeah, no,
about the French.
yeah, obviously. But yeah, no, yeah, King Henry V had, I think it was Calais, yeah, for like a really long time, and well, the French were like, well, that's ours, and King Henry's like, no, I am the King of France. God has ordained me as the King of France. I am the King of France. You're going against God at this point, and that's basically what kicked all that off. But
Well,
yeah, so I mean, there's always some kind of need for war, especially because it's profitable.
when
It's extremely profitable for the victor, at least.
well, now you use the word need. Now,
Hmm.
is there is that isn't that a very non-humane way to look at civilization, like a need for war, right? Like,
Well, I mean, it's instinctual. It's like natural. You can see wars happening in the animal kingdom. I mean, one group of something will go and attack another group and take their territory over. If a wolf pack gets too big, they'll invade another wolf pack.
um, uh,
Ed's raiding us. It's a one
oh,
person raid.
he's a one
Oh
person.
no.
I hope we get a D pick. Um,
Well, yeah, same thing with like ants. You know, an ant colony will attack another ant colony and take over its whatever its ant hill.
okay, so now you say instinctual, I say human nature. I guess technically those could be considered the same thing.
Sure, but I don't think it's
I
exclusive to
argue
humans,
I
right?
argue that no. I'm not going to say it's exclusive to humans. No. Um, but I am going to say that that's why like natural rights, I think tie more into instinctual need than, actual authoritatively given rights by nature.
Well,
But
yeah,
that's a different conversation.
yeah,
But what I would ask is this: we have a lot of instinctual needs that we don't act on, that we are civilized enough. So, for instance, let's look at having, you know intimate relationships with what we consider minors at 13 years or older. We're talking about when a girl has gone through puberty, and so is a boy. When we talk about having intimate encounters with those from a present day civilized manner, we see that as wrong here in this country, and we are expected to overcome that natural instinct to procreate, to
yeah.
have sexual relationships with, because monogamy is a man-made, is a social construct. We're not a
Um,
monogamous mate for life creature. That's not part of our species. It's been shown that we're not one of those species. That was, if you go from the standpoint, yes, if you go from the standpoint of religion, yes, it will, it kind of builds this idea that marriage has always been a thing, even if it wasn't like an official sanctified ceremony till well past Adam
well,
and Eve. They
yeah.
didn't.
Also, polygamy was huge for a very long
Sure.
time.
So it's not like we're a mate for life species, but we are expected to quell that instinct for the social. Why isn't it isn't it an expectation that we as humans, as civilized humans, if we present ourselves as civilized humans, whatever country you're in, why isn't war, why isn't this aggressive nature completely stepped on the way it should be, so that we don't have war? Why isn't it, I don't understand why we can't control
So,
that
right.
part of our nature.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's so ingrained in humanity as a whole, in like
Right.
human culture.
Sure.
Every single culture has some sort of culture of war at some point, right? It usually has to do with territorial disputes, resources, especially. That's the biggest one. Um, it it's just kind of something that we've always done ever since there's been a group of people. Since there's been two separate groups of people, we've been at war with each other. Um, so that's just something that's never really been stopped. Now we will pay lip service to war is bad, and we shouldn't, commit war. We should be peaceful. We'll pay lip service to it. Our politicians will pay lip service to it. Um, but deep down, it is an ingrained part of humanity. We are just an aggressive species, and we're going to fight over resources, especially.
Ron Helton has made it back into the chat.
Oh yeah, what's up, dude?
Um, yeah, so this is part of going into what is troubling me lately, and especially with all the aggression that's going on throughout the world. These very much are troubled times that we live in when we think about the global picture. There's war on multiple fronts, or the impetus of war, the foreshadowing, the threat, the you pick the synonymous words you would like. Whip out your thesaurus, and
Dinosaurs are dead. What are you talking about?
right, um, exactly. Um,
Six Semper Rebellious.
has there,
Rebellibus. Sorry.
from your
What's up, Anna
experience
Voltus?
from your
Sorry.
experience with war throughout history, has there ever been a time where a war has resulted in um, Well, I guess for the best part, a long-standing a real peace, or and now I can,
Hmm.
but I guess global peace can't be part of that because I
No,
don't think that's
no,
never been achieved, right? We know that.
no.
Um, but any wars that you would qualify as good, as having had
Well, those are two different
been
questions.
successful. Well, okay, so successful, I can't say that, but yeah, um, qualify a good war. Is there has there ever been one?
Well, good in what way? Like justified, righteous?
Well, see, now I don't know that you could sell me on any war being justified unless it's in defense, right? You know, responding in
Right.
defense is justified war, in
Yep.
my opinion. But he's trying to push Twitch more so he can rate us more. Thanks, Ed. I like that. Um, but yeah, I guess good from the standpoint of for the betterment of mankind. I guess if that's not too much of a flowery flower child kind of.
Yeah, it kind of is. 'Cause that's kind of,
You
first
know,
of all, it's subjective as to what is for the betterment of mankind as a whole.
well,
Um, no, go ahead.
I was going to say it could be argued that some wars have had an impact on the direction mankind as a whole was
Yeah.
going, right?
Well, I mean, that goes without saying. That's without doubt. I mean, like the Roman Empire's expansion, while you might not justify it as something that's necessary, but it brought culture to places that were not cultured. It brought, I guess, when Troy was leveled, there was peace. Yeah, that tends to happen when you.
There was a piece of property for sale, is what there was.
Yeah, it was free real estate. Um, but no, I mean the spread of the Roman Empire, right? It was done through conquest for the most part,
Right.
um, and it brought not only civilization but more advanced technology to many places of the world, which created the countries that we have today and enabled. So, like, without the Roman Empire, there wouldn't have been the British Empire. Without the British Empire, there wouldn't have been United States, at least as we know it today. Same thing with. Have I heard of von Metternich? No, that sounds German, and
He
German is
sounds
gay.
German.
And German is
Hey, don't say things like that.
gay. I'm just fucking with Anna Voltis because he's German. Um,
You shouldn't
but
do that. He's a nice guy.
he is. He is. He's
He's my
he's a wholesome
friend.
boy. um, but yeah, so I mean, I think you can argue that the spread of the Roman Empire was ultimately a good for the whole world, even though it sucked for a lot of people for a while.
And yeah, you know, a lot of people people would argue that say World War II was beneficial for the
Yeah,
world as a whole, and
absolutely.
yes and no. But look, now I'm going to put aside I'm going to put aside all of the negative things that were being done. No, I don't justify any of the bad things that were done. Let me preface this. But, you know, one unified leader over an entire, a lot of, it's not a bad idea. Like, you know, ultimately, Hitler had drive and passion. He was on a path of conquest. And if I'm not mistaken, John, in the past you have not. I guess the best word is approved of conquest.
I
You know,
have or have not.
have I
Approved.
think
Oh, have.
yeah,
Um,
like in talking about what happened here on this continent, for instance, here in America. That was conquest. That wasn't, that was, it was justified because it was a colonization. It was, that was, it can be equated to that.
um.
And maybe
Well,
that's
no, I'm
too
saying that.
strong a word, but, whatever
Yeah,
you want to
I don't
call
think
it.
I necessarily approved of it. I think I might have made an argument for it, which
Right.
is different than advocating for it. I'm saying here's the that point of view specifically.
Okay. I
Not
could agree
saying that I
with that.
necessarily agree with it, but yeah.
I can agree with that. But where do you stand on conquest? when we think about from that aspect, is that justified? Is conquest ever justified?
Um, that's a really good question. I mean, obviously, being a libertarian wouldn't want to do that. I don't really think empire building is something that we should be doing in this day and age. However, I completely understand why it was done in the past, and obviously, I acknowledge that it was a net benefit to those involved at the time, and even in the future, it was a net benefit to people in the future as well. So, uh, do I? I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want it to happen now. So, no, I don't approve of conquest, but I get it, and I obviously acknowledge that there's been net benefit to humanity from it, even with the atrocities happening.
Um, but it was the common thing to do for so long in this world, and even as recently as World War II. And we've seen it in on smaller scales since World War II. You know, when we look at things like the Korean War, things like this, there's conquest is involved in those. You know, people trying to take over other entities. But
Well, those were puppet wars. Those
sure,
were,
whatever.
yeah,
I'm not.
they were
I
proxy.
don't want
Yeah,
to.
they were proxy wars. They
I'm
weren't
not, I
actual.
don't want to go down
Yeah,
get into the politics of the wars. You know, we
right.
understand the idiots that
Well, no,
run
what I'm
these
saying
things.
is it wasn't conquest,
Well,
right?
but
It
I
was
mean,
stopping
if you,
it was
no,
stopping the spread of an ideology, is what it was about.
sure, but North Korea would have been wanted to take over South Korea. Well,
Yeah,
actually, it
they
was all
were.
Korea.
Yeah,
They wanted to make sure that they maintained all of Korea. They wanted
yeah,
the whole thing.
yeah.
But that may not be the best example, but there's other small scale examples that happen around that we don't necessarily get involved in because it doesn't involve oil or whatever. Where land grabs and movement and growth, etc. Russia's kind of big on that over the last 2 or 3 decades, right? You know, trying to take over a little of this, a little of that.
Yeah.
Um, so is that this idea? You know, I've thought about it before. I've said something to you
Mm.
about it, and you've laughed about it. Is this idea that, well, why don't we take over? Why
Yeah.
if we are this major superpower that we are, why don't we do what's necessary to, I don't know, if we're going to foot the bill for everything around the world, if we're going to do this, that, and the other, why don't we take over? Why don't we make conquest a good thing?
Well, so we did attempt that in a way through the UN and through NATO, um, and it's kind of worked. I mean, our power is kind of weaned over the past maybe 20 years. But I mean, that was kind of an attempt to do it. It was after World War II. That's when we really started being the police of the world. We started putting our noses in every little conflict, in one way or another. You know, so we have, in a way, attempted to do that without doing it directly.
It. I, I've, I don't. It goes against my grain to think about it. It's not like I want us to go out and conquer the world, but it seems like the better answer, the simpler answer to so many things. Yeah, sure, it'd take a little bit of time depending on how you did it, but I mean, for one of a better idea, there's a lot of the world we could just purchase, right? I mean, it's that would. I mean, how many places in the world would just be like, oh, you want to make us part of America, and we'll be covered under the umbrella of American protection. The Constitution will have rights. It'll just be like you're just dropping America here, right here on our territory. How many places in the world would be up for that?
Um, well, for us buying them outright.
Well, and I say buying them outright or just coming in and taking over. Just be like, look, here's what we can do. Whatever.
I mean, there
You
might be
can.
a couple of governments that might, although I doubt it.
We'll pump
Unless, of
this.
course, Well, unless of course they can maintain their power, right? Because
Yes
I mean
and no.
that's kind of the point of being in
Hmm.
government is to gain power and not lose it. You
No,
know.
they would need a satellite branch of our government. No, you could call it buying off. We would dump a bunch of money into their economy. We would give these people a first world life.
Well, that's
Companies
kind of
would be
what
able.
China is doing in Africa at the moment.
Are they?
Yeah, they're just pumping all kinds of money into infrastructure and resources in
Like they did
Africa
here?
and extracting their resources. Well, no, they're buying like property here mainly.
Yeah, but I mean, there's been a long-standing idea that China has been slowly trying to take over America, in the sense from an economic standpoint.
Hmm.
You know, you know the kind of the conspiracy idea. I don't know if it's a conspiracy
It's
idea or
not much of
not.
a
I
conspiracy.
they
I
they,
mean,
they really did secure a
on the
foothold.
west coast, yeah, on the west coast of the U.S., they have like there are buildings, tons and tons of buildings that sit empty, that are owned by Chinese companies,
Yeah.
and they're just sitting empty.
So is that the new conquest? Is that the acceptable conquest of the present day? If you want to take over, I mean,
I think that's the only real way you're going to be able to do it because another world war just people are sick of that shit still. I mean, as soon as someone, started, taking notions, and saying, "Hey, I think I could do this," they're gonna get fucked instantly. I don't think it would be a good idea for anyone to start another world war. So they're just going to do it economically and diplomatically, as opposed to through conquest. I think that's really the only way that you could take over the entire planet
um,
would be through that way because people don't like being conquered. Just throwing that out there in case someone didn't know. People don't generally like being conquered.
and
So it's a lot easier to keep people, passive and subdued if you just take a little bit more at a time. If you got a whole stack of marbles and every day you just kind of take one, it's not a big deal. It's just one more. It's just one more. Just one more. Then eventually that stack is gone.
right. Well, that's it's an interesting thought. So, another question for you: is war the? I don't know. Is it cyclical at all? Is there any pattern to that through our history, that we could draw knowledge
Well,
from?
yeah.
And like,
Oh, I mean that's why we have sequels to a lot of wars. You know.
well,
Um,
and I guess what I mean more like, from a cyclical standpoint, are there ebb and flow throughout our history, our civilized history of war, and is there a reason for it?
you talking about like an ebb and flow. So like more war than other times.
Yeah, like from a global perspective, I mean, it's hard to say. It was different globally speaking once upon a time. I understand that, but yeah, is there some reportable ebb and flow to warfare in our
I
history?
mean, obviously, as a species, we're always at war. As far as I know, there's no time where there was just the entire planet was peaceful.
Right.
Someone was always kicking someone else's ass or getting their own ass kicked. Um, but obviously, once we were able to march armies over large, spaces and a relative, short amount of time, war picked up. It used to be that war was fought in the summer, and that was it. It was called campaign season
Uh huh.
because most of your soldiers would be farmers. So
Gotcha.
in the spring they're plowing their fields and planting and all that kind of crap.
Wyatt in the house.
And then during the summer there wasn't as much to do. You'd have field hands weeding and taking care of the crops, but for the most part there wasn't much to do. So you'd make extra money by going to war, and then but you have to be back by harvest because you need to harvest. And
Right.
then winter, it's too damn cold. No one wants to fight in the cold like that. Generally speaking, of course.
Right.
So you would actually just summer was campaign season. That's what you did in the summer. You went to war.
Okay, so that might be a little more fine tuned in the question I had. if we look at it from a more nature specific angle, the planets, when we think about it from a more cosmic, solar flares impact this planet. The moon has an impact with tidal flows. So, yeah, in as the from a greater aspect, does nature have some impact on these the ebb and flow? Like, are there more hostile? A more hostile period for 200 or 300 years for some reason that might be attributed, around the globe to some global warming. Maybe global warming was going on or something
I don't
weird,
think
right?
so.
I don't
As
know.
far as I know, no. I mean, maybe coming out of the last ice age, perhaps. Um, but no, I don't think so. Generally, as far
Hmm.
as I know, I mean, I could be wrong about that, but no, I've not heard of anything like that.
Yeah, say so like in the 16th century, if like in Europe, what kind of warfare was going on in Europe in the 16th century?
Well, that was when like gunpowder was becoming more and more prevalent.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think no, they were still weren't like at muskets and things like that. You'd have like pike and shot, bombard cannons. So you'd have like these massive cannons that were meant to level, walls, which is when walls, like walled settlements, walled towns, walled, castles, started to fall out of style. Because they just be taken down by this massive cannon.
Right.
But they were very, they were hard to bring around. They were hard to transport, especially. They were, very dangerous to operate. They were primitive
Right.
weapons at the time, and then you would have, like I said,
Right.
pike and shot. So you'd be able to fire a volley out of this little like
Right.
basically a hand cannon,
Right.
like this
What?
big, just boom, and then you go to your pike.
Well, more like I guess I mean more like what was warlike at the time. I mean more. What kind of aggressions were there? Any major wars going on in the 16th century? Specifically, say around the mid 16th century, or you know, anywhere, any of the, if you broke it down into thirds, were there any wars that you can think of specifically that were pretty big during the 16th century? And the reason I ask is because 16th century, that's the last time they recorded what they called one of the mini ice ages that we've talked about before, where there was a long period of time where there was a global cool down. So I'm just kind of curious if there was any war if there were any major wars in that century, that you know I know it's an odd thing to think, but when you're talking about very cold temperatures throughout much of the world, that kind of thing, does that slow the
Well, I
aggressions
mean,
on the planet or does that speed it up?
no, there were certainly, wars going on during that time. I mean, there were a bunch.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of some, and I've got. Oh yeah, there most certainly were. Let's see. Um, yeah, I'm just reading about the gunpowder shit. So yeah, rapid advance stuff of what I was talking about, the like gunpowder.
The
Um,
nerd part.
yeah, the fun part, not this shit that you're trying to get me into. Um, yeah, I'm not seeing anything about like the 1500s.
Yeah, see, that's I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just one of those things that where because I start to wonder, if it's something that we can control or not, like, or if we just choose not to control it. Going back to that original question, why, it just surprises me that we don't attempt to suppress it
Here we
more
go.
than we do.
Here we go. Yeah, there's the Italian War, 1499 to 1505. War of the League of Cambrai, 1508 to 1516. Spanish conquest of Mexico, duh. Yeah, 1519 to 1521. Wars of the Suleiman, Magnificent.
So little. So these
More
are
Italian Wars, War of the League of Cognac, So they're fighting over liquor. No,
Shut up.
obviously not. Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, Wars of the Sengoku period. Oh, that's an interesting one.
Ron Helton says
Yeah.
Spanish
Oda
conquest of the
Nobunaga.
New World. Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah.
This.
Dude, that is an interesting one. Oda Nobunaga. Uh, I would recommend looking him up. He's pretty badass,
Who was he?
dude. He was one of the ones who was fighting against the daimyos, the lords in Japan during that time. Um, yeah, the Sengoku period was basically like kind of the last real era of the samurai as people think of them
Mm, gotcha.
as being, yeah, as being like,
You're right. Gotcha. Yeah,
yeah.
that sounds familiar. Then here's a question for you from the standpoint of conquest. Why is it
Oh, the
that
Anglo-Spanish War too. Japanese invasion of Korea. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of shit.
um, why is it, or has it, if it has happened, you can point this out to me that I may not realize. Um, why hasn't England historically like ever been successful in taking over all of Europe? I mean, have they?
Um,
It has been attempted, right?
Not by England,
Specifically, not specifically by England, or
right? Not specifically by England. Yeah.
so when we refer to it as England, how far back do we go? We go
Just to right after the fall of the Roman Empire.
that I need numbers, John.
I don't do dates. Dates are not my thing.
When was the fall of the Roman Empire? Like how many was that I don't know. I don't remember the fall of the
um,
Roman Empire.
yeah,
That
me either.
but that's when England got that's when England became a
That's what. Well, yeah,
or
when
was born.
with the Norman invasions, things like that, that really kind of solidified the like the Anglos and the Saxons invading, and they, kind of became the Anglo Saxons, and they, created England, basically.
Now,
Uh,
if I'm not
I
mis-
don't know nearly as much about that as I do about more future things than that. But
well,
that's the gist of what was going on.
Well, even this, the the I guess if we want to call it the mentality of English conquest of throughout the world. I mean, we can look at these smaller places that let's look at Hong Kong. Where they've occupied Hong Kong. They've occupied so many different places around the world.
Yeah.
Those kind of things I see as a form of conquest, I guess,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's more economical play that.
Economic conquest, right? Which is why I've had this conversation with Cameron, who's usually in our chat. He was earlier. I don't know if he's still there. Uh, where he said that we're just like the Roman Empire, like the U.S. is, and I've always said no, we're more like the British Empire because we don't go out and just straight up conquer places and settle them and absorb them. We conquer places economically, which is what the British Empire did. I mean, don't get me wrong, they used force when necessary, but it was largely due to trade deals. It was largely due to uh, 1066, William the Conqueror invaded England. Well, yeah, William the Conqueror was a bad motherfucker. Um, what was I saying? Something about I've been up too long, man. I'm tired.
That were like the Roman
Uh,
Empire. You and Cameron on your
yes, yeah,
one
yeah,
of your
yeah.
dates.
Yep. Um, but yeah, yeah. So that's what the British Empire did. That's a subject that I have a lot more knowledge on. Is like the British Empire.
Well, okay. So
Um,
is that the British Empire? Is that different than England? I mean, we are still talking about the same thing, right?
well, the British Empire included Great Britain, which was England, Wales, and Scotland. So
Okay.
those are
It,
three separate countries that are
conquer
ruled by one
territories.
country.
Conquer territories.
Right.
Right. And I was I was going to mention that I mean they have territories that they've conquered that still I mean Scotland still sees itself as Scotland, but they're part of the British Empire, right?
Oh,
Uh,
dude, Elmer Goring, welcome. I don't think I've seen you before. Have you ever watched The Greatest Story Ever Told?
who was that?
No, I don't believe I have.
Why does that sound familiar?
It does sound really familiar, but I don't believe I've
And
actually watched it.
I'm not confusing it with the Never-Ending Story,
Right, it's a different. Yeah, it's totally different.
but no, the greatest story
I
ever.
actually heard about it recently, and I
Look
can't
it up. Look it up. Look
place
it up.
it. All right, but yeah, what were we talking about? Something
Well, so
British. Oh yeah, the Great Britain, right?
I mean, I've never understood why they, it seems like they've made attempts to acquire territory throughout the years, throughout the centuries, but they've never been successful. Other than when you talk about Scotland and Wales.
Oh, okay. It's it's a 1965 film that's a retelling of the biblical account of Jesus of Nazareth from the Nativity through the Ascension.
Oh yes, 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 yes. Good Lord, I think I have watched that when I was a kid. Oh my God.
Oh, the greatest story never told. Well, that's a different.
Oh wait.
God damn it! All right,
Wow.
let's look that up then.
The greatest story never told. That's yeah, John. Come on.
Sorry.
Oh
Let's
no, it
see.
was his fault. He did it. He put
Yeah, I
it
know.
out there wrong.
Oh, it's a Hitler movie.
Oh.
Um,
Going back to what we talked about earlier.
what's his child? Oh, it just follows Hitler's childhood to the death of his mother and his broken ambition to become an artist, then further into his entry into politics, service in the army, accolades. So it's basically yeah, just like a history of
What built his
uh,
passion for leadership?
yeah,
Is that a polite way to put it?
I suppose so.
His passion for leadership, his charisma, his
Charisma.
charisma.
But yeah, so you were gonna ask something though, I think
Well, I
about
mean, do you find it surprising that England is not larger? Like that there is so many different countries still in Europe as opposed to the British Empire having encompassed more territory over there. I mean, I would think that they would have been successful at that, but they
well, I
just
mean,
haven't been.
why? Well, yeah, as Ron Helton points out, I believe. Yeah, the English conquest was more along the lines of royal marriages between different European houses. So they were gaining influence and relations through marrying family members to
Sure.
other royal people in Europe. So there was no real need to conquer them when they could manipulate instead. And not only that, but it would be too difficult to conquer, that vast amount of land. Whereas, being able to establish like diplomatic relations with a far off country that had a shitload of resources that Europe doesn't have is much more profitable and probably easier to do a lot of the time because
Right.
they weren't as advanced with technology or military tactics and affairs.
Well, yeah, yeah, you say that, but then I look back at people like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar,
Hmm.
Napoleon. These guys were doing major things,
Oh,
and
Napoleon was probably one of the best generals to ever live in the
I
history.
know you get a little boner for Napoleon, um,
Yeah, well, he was a bad motherfucker, man.
with a little boner.
I
Um,
mean, he became emperor twice. I mean, who does that?
Napoleon.
Yeah, who else has done that? I mean, I'm sure there's an example that can be brought up, but
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's I look at these, and I've always just thought that England has had the ability. I've just always thought that they had the ability, and they never really successfully took their shot. Like for instance, Hitler did. Like Germany did. Germany took a shot and it worked, and I'm like, if he was able to do that, if Germany was able to do that, how has
well,
England, the British Empire, not been
so
able to do that? But you said they
well,
chose
so
not to.
while it worked, it wasn't sustainable. It worked because of how he did it and how quickly he accomplished it. That's why it was able to work, because basically people weren't expecting it, until it started, obviously.
You don't think it could have been sustainable if like he had stopped, if he had just cold hard stopped and said, you know what, I've got enough for now. I'm not doing anything else, and he stopped aggressions and focused on empire building. Within.
Yeah, I don't think so because
You
there
don't
were
think
too
he
many
could have?
No, there were too many subversive elements in the countries that he was occupying. I don't think that it was sustainable.
Yeah. And so again, that points back to something what I said earlier about war. I mean, you can come in and you can wage war on somebody, but you're probably just creating another war, right?
Yeah,
They're gonna somebody's gonna want to rise up. Someone's not gonna be happy about it. Two guys don't get in a fist fight outside of a bar and then stand up after it's over and go, "Wow, you're my best friend ever. We got no
actually, that's the one
problems. That's
place.
solved everything."
That's the one place where that might actually happen.
I mean, it's a occasion. Usually, but usually that's like one of those. Somebody says something, the other guy, one guy throws a punch, and the other guy's like, "You know what, man? I deserve that. Whatever." That
No, no, I'm talking about
But
like
when
an
you have
actual
the
fist
knock,
fight, and
yeah,
afterwards you're like, all right, that was
when
stupid. Sorry.
when you have when you have the full blown knockdown drag out where you damn near want to kill one another, nobody walks
Yeah,
away from. There's
yeah, yeah.
one guy gets his ass. He's not happy about that. Nobody's ever happy
But
about an ass whooping.
he's also not necessarily going to come back and try and
Well, sure.
Some people do, some people will, but other people won't.
Some
Yeah,
won't do it out of fear. Others will do it out
yeah.
of stupidity. you
But no,
know.
the time for conquest was during the medieval era because people were a lot less like there was no real notion of like statehood, no real notion of your country. You know what I mean?
Like
There
freedom.
was there was well, no, I mean there was the
Oh,
king though, and
gotcha.
there was mostly if you were a peasant, it was just the lord who occupied the castle near your farm.
Right. So you were
You
beholding
know,
to a person, not the country,
right,
the
and
land.
so it doesn't really matter who's in that castle as long as they're leaving you alone. It doesn't really affect your life much.
Right.
Other than maybe your tax rate. That's about it. So there's not a lot of rising up potential there, just because they don't care. They're just trying to eke out a living.
Right.
You know, but once you have the idea of like nationalism and things like that, you have a lot more of a impetus to rise up and reclaim your country.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to put it out there that England is like the libertarians of Europe. They had their chance. They could have risen up, but
Okay, but
now
they
they
also
just
had
they could
a
have
very
been somebody.
expansive empire. They were.
There it is.
they
There it is. That's what I'm talking about. So
were
they
somebody.
had
You
their
fuck.
they had
They
they
still
had
are.
an
They have
ex.
the Commonwealth. They have the Commonwealth of Nations. They're still somebody.
Do they? I mean,
Yes, they do.
I mean, come on.
Yes.
What with the EU is now, just
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about
that's
the Commonwealth of Nations. That's going to be your India, your Australia, your Micronesian islands.
anywhere where
Uh,
they've occupied and been friendly.
right.
Been,
Yeah, the Falklands.
yeah, yeah.
All these places that are,
I'm sorry. Has certain
the,
places where they have their thumb down. What?
yeah, and also Canada until kind of recently.
Yeah.
Like they're still. I don't know if they're still part of the Commonwealth of Nations. I doubt it. Not with the French part
And isn't it a,
being in existence.
and isn't it amazing that that's okay? That's still we're okay with that. We don't argue about that so
Well, because
much.
they're not actually like ruling it. They have their own governments. It's more of like, trade union and it's much easier to immigrate to the UK from a Commonwealth nation. South Africa is another one.
I mean,
But yeah,
do we do it? Do we do it different with our the countries that we have in the same sense? Like when we talk about Puerto Rico, Guam,
right. Well,
are
we
we?
give them
Are we? Go ahead.
they're citizens, so yeah, they can move freely to either other territories or to the mainland of the U.S. Yeah,
So you would say we're kind of the same way, but we came
I think we
about
give them more.
we
I
came
think we give
about
them more.
we came about having them under our sway differently than
Yeah,
the British Empire did, right?
yeah,
We
yeah. It was
we
more
would agree
about
with that.
strategic locations, which with the British Empire, they were. I mean, that's why they still have Gibraltar, because it's the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea, which was huge for trade, and still is. So if you control Gibraltar, you have a good way of that choke point right there between that and
Right,
Majorca.
right.
You can control who's going in and out, and That was any young sea captain wanted to be in the Mediterranean because you're just taking ships day and night and getting all kinds of prize money. Like that's what you wanted.
Wow.
Um, yeah, because you got to go to the Mediterranean to trade by sea at least.
So at least we can stand on the fact that we did everything consensually.
Yeah,
All
we
right,
sure did. That's
more or
right.
less, more or
We
less here.
consented to every bit of
Well,
it.
no, I'm talking about with like Puerto Rico and Guam for with our holdings, as it were, if you want to call them
I
that. Our
actually don't know anything about the history of those, so I'm
Well,
not going to
we
say that
we
definitively.
present it as being consensual. It's
Well,
not
of
like
course, yeah.
we don't present it like we're an occupying force, and
Right, we're a benevolent empire. It's
we
okay.
are. Yes. All
We
right,
actually are compared to a lot of other ones, but yeah.
but John, back to the original question: war. What is it good for,
Wealth.
and what
It's
is
always
that good
good for
for?
wealth. For economy, for making the whole country better, because you spend that money. So let me walk you through it then.
No,
Um,
no, John, I was being silly.
no, no,
It's
no.
it's
You no, no,
more.
no. You started
It was a rhetorical question.
it.
It's more of a
Fine.
rhetorical question.
You asked a follow-up rhetorical question, which I think is pretty
No,
weird.
the
So,
follow up was the rhetorical
all
question. The follow up was the rhetorical.
right, let's get out of here.
Yeah, get me the hell out of here. Warmongers are just. Well, I will ask this one last question. Just one
Oh,
last
goddamn
question.
it!
I know you
All right.
love. I know you love the history of war, military history, and all of that. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Different times, whatever. If you could trade all of that, would you trade all of that for no more war? In
Trade
the
all of what? Like,
like, would you trade all of the history that's being created with these wars, or all the things that go on with it? Would you trade the Schadenfreude for no more war? Like, if it was just gone out of our
like those wars still existed, but
no,
there's no
no,
future wars, or there was
no,
just never any war at all ever.
like no more war, peace on Earth.
Well, you see,
Would you
you keep saying
trade?
no. Okay, you keep saying no more war. Does that mean that no war is in the future, but all the wars that already happened have
Oh yeah,
happened?
yeah. There just would be no more war moving forward. There would be nothing for us to watch and enjoy, from
So
that
there would still be
perspective.
nothing stopping me from learning about it
Well, you
again.
could still look at the history, but there would be no new histories made. There would be nothing new moving
Oh
forward
yeah,
about
I'll
war.
be, yeah, I'll be fine with that.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So,
Because I don't mean I don't like I've said in I think it was in the Discord that my interest in military history kind of dropped off after the American Civil War,
hmm.
so I don't know as much about things that happened after that. So yeah, screw it, don't need
I
it.
I like Ed's response. I'd only trade it for goodwill towards men. But you have that right now, sir.
But not women though.
December commercialism guarantees the goodwill towards men.
Right.
That's what we've got. Buy me a gift, and you have my goodwill. Anyway,
I even
so
get from Goodwill.
John, um, make it easy for even a blind man to find us, please.
There you go.
Even a blind man, John. John,
I know. So
you
yeah,
can't
everything.
use your sign language.
Yes. So if you scroll down, you'll see a like button that you should hit. You'll see a subscribe button that you should hit. Little bell notification that you should hit. If you scroll a little bit more, you'll find the description box, which has all of our links, such as our Twitter link, which is at the GenGapP, such as our Discord link, which is down there, such as the link to freedomscoop.com, which is awesome. The link
Yes.
to our shirts, which are even better, and also our promo code, which you can use to get 15% off of said shirts. So make sure you do that,
I
because that
recommend
would be
that
awesome. Yes, we recommend it. We recommend our own products.
with a thumbs up, no matter what you might think it means, because our shirts are okay.
They are okay. But all right, yeah, I think that's it. No new
Is
announcements
that
yet.
is that it, John? The
That
it
is
of
it.
the it. All right, we're gonna get the hell out of here, folks. Thanks for coming by. We saw a lot of new faces, old faces, some faces, no faces. We didn't see any faces, actually. I don't think so. But we appreciate you coming out. We appreciate you being part of this. And John, thanks for stopping by. You should go get you some sleep
I'm gonna.
because we're going to be back again on Friday at 8:30 for our regular episode that we shoot on Fridays. Um, what day is
Wow.
What day is Christmas this year? We're not going to have to skip an
It's
episode or anything.
Wednesday.
It's
No,
on
it's a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Okay, we're good. So um, we have that, and then of course we'll be back next Monday with another round of shooting the shit. Again, I'm putting it out there, Nathaniel Slattery Bear. If you're out there, I'm putting it out here on video. I want to talk with you. We need to talk. But I'll throw it in Discord, and we'll have that too. Other than that, John, I'm going to get the hell out of here and go act like I know something worth talking about. But until then, I'll see you on Friday.
Yep. See you guys.
Peace.
If you like what you heard tonight, please make sure and go ahead and subscribe. Hit that like button. Tell your friends, tell your family, blast it on Twitter, throw it on Instagram, send it in an email to your grandma, and mail it to your congressman. Make sure everybody hears about it. Let's get part of the discussion going with all of you out there, just as well as we're having the conversation here. We're going to keep talking. We'll see you next time.